Hey everybody, welcome to Pawpaw Storytime. Before I start reading, I am out in the country at my mom and pa's, your great grandma and great grandpa. I want to show you guys the living room that I'm reading from. All Christmas. Yep. Turn the camera around, set it down. A little bit different setup here. And see if you guys can. That'll work, right? Oh man, I ate a bunch today. One of our Thanksgivings down over at my little sister's at your Aunt Stephanie's house. And by the time this beard turns all the way white, I'm gonna have a belly big enough to be Santa Claus. So let me see, before we get started here, I'm gonna read a couple of things. I do know that we got a couple birthdays. Grandma Lovey's birthday is coming up, so happy birthday to Grandma Lovey. It's coming up this week. And my governor, her birthday's gonna be this week too. Thank you. AKA Mimi, right? I think when we get done tonight, we're gonna watch It Came Upon a Midnight Clear with Mickey Rooney. I haven't seen that in years, and I seen a thing come through my newsfeed earlier, so I think we're gonna try to watch that. And I want to try to watch the Garfield Christmas special from when I was a kid. Got a lot of things coming up soon. Thanksgiving's on Thursday. Some of the granddaughters next weekend for Moana 2. The movie magic thing is going to be December 7th in the Higginsville Davis Theater. So make sure that you're reminding your parents about that, or if your parents are watching this, make sure that you guys are prepared to be there before 1. The 14th, we're going to be out here at my mom's, out at great grandma's, and we're going to watch both of the Christmas Story movies and do cookies and hot chocolate, I think, maybe eggnog or something. Let me see. Oh, and then after that we have the Rains family Christmas party, and then it'll be Christmas time. So I got this thing says Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving, which occurs on the 4th Thursday in November, is based on the colonial Pilgrims' 1621 harvest meal. The holiday continues to be a day for Americans to gather for a day of feasting, football, and family. It doesn't originate in any one event. It is based on the New England Puritan Thanksgiving, which was a religious Thanksgiving, and the traditional harvest celebrations of England and New England, and maybe other ideas like commemorating the Pilgrims. All of these have been gathered together and transformed into something different from the original parts. And all that information came from James W. Baker, senior historian at Plymouth Plantation. All right, and we got a couple stories we're going to read today, and then our opening and our closing, so we're going to try to get through these pretty quick here. Everything kind of worked out, so I get to start after the Thanksgiving story to read the Little House story, which doesn't have any pictures in it, but it's really cool because it was signed by the cast when we visited the Little House on the Prairie Museum for their 50th anniversary. So anyways, I'm going to read this one. This is the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff with Your Family. So this is for everybody, kids and grandkids, anybody watching. Chapter 14, Encourage Boredom in Your Children. To the typical parent, little is more aggravating than hearing these words from their children. I'm bored, or there's nothing to do. This is especially true for parents who try really hard to provide their children with a variety of experiences and activities to choose from. Yet, ironically, it's the parents who try the hardest who usually suffer the most from those words. Children who have too many opportunities, choices, scheduled activities, and things to do are often the ones who are the most susceptible to boredom. The reason is that these children are used to being entertained and stimulated virtually every moment of every day. They often rush from activity to activity with little time in between. Very simply, if something isn't going on, they feel bored and restless, almost desperate to find something to do. Many kids feel they can't live without a telephone in their hand, a television set, or a radio playing at virtually every moment, or a computer or video game to entertain them. The solution isn't to feed them ideas of things that they can do to alleviate their boredom. As you know, they will usually reject your ideas anyways. A bigger issue, however, is that in the long run, you're doing a disservice to your kids. By offering too many suggestions about ways to keep busy, you're actually feeding the problem by suggesting that the kids really do need something to do every minute of every day. A great solution, and one that will shock your bored kids, is to respond to the "I'm bored" line with a confident, "Great, be bored." You can even go on and say, "It's good for you to be bored once in a while." I can almost guarantee you that once you try this a few times and really mean it, your kids will give up on the idea that it's your responsibility to entertain them on an ongoing basis. A hidden benefit to this strategy is that it will encourage greater creativity in your kids by forcing them to discover things to do on their own. I'm not suggesting you do this all the time, or that you don't take a loving, active role in the activities that your kids participate in. What I'm referring to here is a response to overstimulation. When you know in your heart that your kids have plenty of things to do and that their boredom isn't coming from them, not from a lack of possibilities. I think you'll love the sense of authority you'll feel by putting the problem of boredom back where it belongs, with the kids. And as important, you'll be doing your kids a tremendous favor by teaching them that there's nothing wrong with not having something to do every minute of every day. It's okay to be bored once in a while. I know that as adults, sometimes we long for times to be bored. Stick that over there, and we're going to read our first story today. It's the Berenstain Bears Thanksgiving All Around, and it's called a lift flap book. I know the words aren't turned the right way, but I'll try to get the flaps for you guys as we go here. Thanksgiving is all around, said Papa Bear. Look at the bright fall colors. But fall is nearly over, said Mama Bear. The leaves are dropping fast. I see turkey tracks, says Sister Bear. Here's a flock of wild turkeys. If the wild turkeys are out, says Brother Bear, Thanksgiving must be near. Winter will be here soon, says Brother. The geese are all flying south. Some more turkey tracks lead into this orchard, says Sister. But no turkeys, says Brother. Only apples. Geese flying away behind the clouds. And apple tree. This is Farmer Ben's farm, says Papa. The turkey must belong here. Here, turkey, 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 calls Sister. Who's a turkey, said Miss Ben. I'm peeling corn on the cob. No turkeys here either, says Farmer Ben. I'm stuffing a Thanksgiving scarecrow. I don't see turkeys in the pumpkin patch, says Brother, but I do see Mr. Woodchuck. Miss Ben's pumpkin pie will make a good dessert, says Sister. I'm probably going to have some pumpkin pie when I'm done reading here. Here's the farmyard, said Papa. Did the turkey go into the barns with the cows? Is Mr. Turkey visiting friends in the chicken coop, asks Mama. There's a lot of eggs, but no Mr. Turkey, says Brother. In the barn and in the chicken coop, maybe. Says Brother. There are turkey feathers down by the pond with the ducks, geese, and swans. That turkey must be very close, says Sister. Why, here's Mr. Turkey himself, says Papa. What a fine, proud fellow. Look at him spread his colorful tail, says Mama. Now we really know that Turkey Day is on the way, says the whole bear family. A happy Thanksgiving to all. Come on, turkey flap. The end. Cute little Berenstain Bears story, huh? Now we're going to do the Christmas one. And this is going to be our third annual round of Christmas stories that we'll be reading all the way through the holiday season here. The Little House Christmas Stories that we started 3 years ago, and it's got several stories in it. We actually got to go down and meet a bunch of the cast from the Little House on the Prairie old television show. It was the 50th anniversary, and a bunch of them signed the book that I read to you guys. Pretty neat, huh? Okay, and the first story that we're going to read is Christmas in the Big Wood. Christmas, page number 3. Once upon a time, a little girl named Laura Ingalls lived in a log cabin in the big woods of Wisconsin with her pa, her ma, her big sister Mary, and her baby sister Carrie. Laura had many adventures as she traveled west across the prairie with her family in their covered wagon. And when Laura was grown, she told of these adventures in her Little House books. Some of the most wonderful stories in these books are those that tell of Merry Christmas celebrations in the little houses of the big woods of Wisconsin, on the Kansas prairie, and on the banks of the beautiful Plum Creek in Minnesota. Here are all of the special Christmas stories from long ago days gathered together in one holiday storybook. Merry Christmas, Laura. Christmas in the Big Woods. It's wintertime in the big woods of Wisconsin, and a little log cabin in the woods is practically covered with snow. Inside the cabin is a little girl named Laura Ingalls, and she's very excited because Christmas is almost here. Laura is only 4 years old, but she's big enough to help her pa, her ma, and her big sister Mary get the little house ready for Christmas visitors. It's very cold and snowy outside, but Laura and Mary know that Santa Claus will be coming soon with all sorts of Christmas treasures. Those are important Christmas treasures right there. Christmas was coming. The little log house was almost buried in snow. Great drifts were banked against the walls and windows, and in the morning when Pa opened the door, there was a wall of snow as high as Laura's head. Pa took the shovel and shoveled it away. Then he shoveled a path to the barn, where the horses and the cows were snug and warm in their stalls. The days were clear and bright. Laura and Mary stood on chairs by the window and looked out across the glittering snow at the glittering trees. Snow was piled all on their bare dark branches, and it sparkled in the sunshine. Icicles hung from the eaves of the house to the snowbanks, great icicles as large as the top of Laura's arm. They were like glass and full of sharp lights. Pa's breath hung in the air like smoke. When he came along the path from the barn, he breathed it out in clouds, and it froze in white frost on his mustache and beard. When he came in, stamping the snow from his boots, and caught Laura in a bear's hug against the cold big coat, his mustache was beaded with little drops of melting frost. Every night he was busy working on a large piece of board and 2 small pieces. He whittled them with his knife. He rubbed them with sandpaper and with the palm of his hand until when Laura touched them, they felt soft and smooth as silk. Then, with his sharp jackknife, he worked at them, cutting the edges of the large one into little peaks and towers, with a large star carved on the very tallest point. He cut little holes through the wood. He cut the holes in shapes of windows and little stars, crescent moons and circles. All around them he carved tiny leaves and flowers and birds. One of the little boards he shaped in a lovely curve, and around its edges he carved leaves, flowers, and stars. Through it he cut crescent moons and curlicues. Around the edges of the small board he carved a tiny flowering vine. He made the tiniest shavings, cutting very slowly and carefully, making whatever he thought would be pretty. At last he had the pieces finished, and one night he fitted them together. When this was done, the large piece was a beautifully carved back for a smooth little shelf across its middle. The large star was at the very top of it. The curved piece supported the shelf underneath, and it was carved beautifully too, and the little vine ran around the edge of the shelf. Paul had made this bracket for a Christmas present for Ma. He hung it carefully against the log wall between the windows. Ma stood her little China woman on that shelf. The little China woman had a china bonnet on her head, and china curls hung against her china neck. Her china dress was laced across the front, and she wore a pale pink china apron and little gilt china shoes. She was beautiful, standing on the shelf with flowers and leaves, and birds and moons carved all around her, the large star at the very top. Ma was busy all day long cooking good things for Christmas. She baked salt-rising bread and rye and Injun bread and Swedish crackers and a huge pan of baked beans with salt pork and molasses. She baked vinegar pies and dried apple pies, filled a big jar with cookies, and she let Mary and Laura lick the cake spoon. One morning she boiled molasses and sugar together until they made a thick syrup. Pa brought in 2 pans of clean white snow from outdoors. Laura and Mary each had a pan, and Pa and Ma showed them how to pour the dark syrup in the little streams onto the snow. They made circles and curlicues and squiggly things, and these hardened at once and were like candy. Laura and Mary might eat 1 piece each, but the rest was saved for Christmas Day. All this was done because Aunt Eliza, Uncle Peter, and the cousins, Peter, Alice, and Ella, were coming to spend Christmas. The day before Christmas they came. Laura and Mary heard the gay ringing of sleigh bells growing louder every moment, and then the big bobsled came out of the woods and drove up to the gate. Aunt Eliza and Uncle Peter and the cousins were in it, all covered up under blankets and robes and buffalo skins. They were wrapped up in so many coats and mufflers and veils and shawls that they looked like big shapeless bundles. When they all came in, the little house was full and running over. Black Susan ran out and hid in the barn, but Jack leaped in circles through the snow, barking as though he would never stop. Now there were cousins to play with. As soon as Aunt Eliza had unwrapped them, Peter and Alice and Ella and Laura and Mary began to run and shout. At last, Aunt Eliza told them to be quiet. Then Alice said, I'll tell you what, let's do. Let's make pictures. Alice said they must go outdoors to do it. And Ma thought it was too cold for Laura to play outdoors. But when she saw how disappointed Laura was, she said she might go. After all, for a little while. She put on Laura's coat and mittens and the warm cape with the hood and wrapped a muffler around her neck and let her go. Laura had never had so much fun. All morning she played outdoors in the snow with Alice, Ella, and Peter and Mary making pictures. The way they did it was this. Each one by herself climbed up on a stump. Then all at once, holding their arms out wide, they fell off the stumps into the soft, deep snow. They fell flat on their faces when they tried to get up without spoiling the marks that they had made when they fell. If they did it well, there in the snow were 5 holes shaped almost exactly like 4 little girls and a boy, arms and legs and all. They called these their pictures. They played so hard all day that when the night came, they were too excited to sleep. But they must sleep or Santa Claus would not come. So they hung their stockings by the fireplace and said their prayers and went to bed. Alice and Ella and Mary and Laura, all in one big bed on the floor. Peter had the trundle bed. Aunt Eliza and Uncle Peter were going to sleep in the big bed, and another bed was made on the attic floor for Pa and Ma. The buffalo robes and all the blankets had been brought in from Uncle Peter's sled, so there were enough covers for everybody. Pa and Ma and Aunt Eliza and Uncle Peter sat by the fire talking, and just as Laura was drifting off to sleep, she heard Uncle Peter say, Eliza had a narrow squeak the other day when I was away at Lake when I was away at Lake City. You know Prince, that big dog of mine?" Laura was wide awake at once. She always liked to hear about the dogs. She lay still as a mouse and looked at the firelight flickering on the log walls and listened to Uncle Peter. "Well," Uncle Peter said, "early in the morning Eliza started to the spring to get a pail of water, and Prince was following her. She got to the edge of the ravine where the path goes down the spring, and all of a sudden Prince set his teeth in the back of her skirt and pulled. You know what a big dog he is. Eliza scolded him, but he wouldn't let go. And he's so big and strong she couldn't get away from him. He kept backing and pulling till he tore a piece of her skirt. It was my blueprint," Aunt Eliza said to Ma. "Dear me," Ma said. "She tore a big piece right out of the back of it. I was so mad I could have whipped him for it, but he growled at me." "Prince growled at you?" Pa said. "Yes," said Aunt Eliza. "So then she started on again toward the spring," Uncle Peter went on. "But Prince jumped into the path ahead of her and snarled at her. He paid no attention to her talking and scolding. He just kept on showing his teeth and snarling. And when she tried to get past him, he kept in front of her and snapped at her, and that scared her." "I should think it would," Ma said. "Oh. He was so savage I thought he was going to bite me," said Aunt Eliza. "I believe he would have." "I never heard of such a thing," said Ma. "What on earth did you do?" "I turned right around and ran into the house where the children were and slammed the door." "Of course Prince was savage with strangers," said Uncle Peter, "but he was always kind to Eliza and the children." "I felt perfectly safe to leave them with him." Eliza couldn't understand it at all. "After she got into the house, he kept pacing around it and growling. Every time she started to open the door, he jumped at her and snarled." "Had he gone mad?" said Ma. "That's what I thought," Aunt Eliza said. "I didn't know what to do. There I was, shut up in the house with the children, and not daring to go out. And we didn't have any water. I couldn't even get any snow to melt. Every time I opened the door so much as a crack, Prince acted like he would tear me to pieces." "How long did this go on?" Pa asked. "All day, till late in the afternoon," Aunt Eliza said. "Peter had taken the gun, or I would have shot him." "Along late in the afternoon," Uncle Peter said, "he got quiet and lay down in front of the door. Eliza thought he was asleep, and she made up her mind to try to slip past him to get to the spring for some water. So she opened the door very quietly, but of course he woke up right away. When he saw she had the water pail in her hand, he got up and walked ahead of her to the spring, just the same as usual. And there, all around the spring in the snow, were the fresh tracks of a panther." "The tracks were as big as my hand," said Aunt Eliza. "Yes," Uncle Peter said. "He was a big fellow. His tracks were the biggest I ever saw. He would have got Eliza for sure, if Prince hadn't let her go to the spring in the morning. If Prince had let her go to the spring in the morning. I saw the tracks. He had been lying up in that big oak over the spring, waiting for some animal to come there for water. Undoubtedly, he would have dropped down on her. Night was coming on when she saw the tracks, and she didn't waste any time getting back to the house with her pail of water. Prince followed close behind her, looking back into the ravine now and then. I took him into the house with me," Aunt Eliza said, "and we all stayed inside until Peter came home." "Did you get him?" Pa asked Uncle Peter. "No," Uncle Peter said. "I took my gun and hunted all around the place, but I couldn't find him. I saw some more of his tracks. He'd gone on north, farther into the big woods." Alice and Ella and Mary were all wide awake now, and Laura put her head under the covers and whispered to Alice, "My, weren't you scared?" Alice whispered back that she was scared, but Ella was scareder. And Ella whispered that she wasn't either any such thing. "Well, anyways, you made more fuss about being thirsty," Alice whispered. They lay there whispering about it until Ma said, "Charles, those children never will go to sleep unless you play for them." So Pa got his fiddle. The room was still warm and full of firelight. Ma's shadow and Aunt Eliza and Uncle Peter's were big and quivering on the walls in the flickering firelight, and Pa's fiddle sang merrily to itself. It sang, Money Musk, and the Red Heifer, and the Devil's Dream, and the Arkansas Traveler. And Laura went to sleep while Paw and the fiddle were both softly singing, "My darling Nellie Gray, they have taken you away, and I'll never see my darling any more." In the morning they all woke up, almost at the same moment. They looked at their stockings, and something was in them. Santa Claus had been there. Alice and Ella and Laura, in their red flannel nightgowns, and Peter in his red flannel nightshirt, all ran shouting to see what he had brought. In each stocking there were a pair of bright red mittens, and there was a long flat stick of red and white striped peppermint candy, all beautifully notched along each side. They were all so happy they could hardly speak at first. They just looked with shining eyes at those lovely Christmas presents. But Laura was happiest of all. Laura had a rag doll. She was a beautiful doll. She had the face of white cloth with black button eyes. A black pencil had made her eyebrows, and her cheeks and her mouth were red with the ink made from pokeberries. Her hair was black yarn that had been knitted and raveled so that it was curly. She had a little red flannel stockings and little black cloth gaiters for shoes, and her dress was pretty pink and blue calico. She was so beautiful that Laura could not say a word. She just held her tight and forgot everything else. She did not know that everyone was looking at her until Aunt Eliza said, "Did you ever see such big eyes?" The other girls were not jealous because Laura had mittens and candy and a doll, because Laura was the littlest girl except baby Carrie, and Aunt Eliza's baby doll, Darlie Varden. The babies were too small for dolls. They were so small they did not even know about Santa Claus. They just put their fingers in their mouths and wriggled because of all the excitement. Laura sat down on the edge of the bed and held her doll. She loved her red mittens and she loved the candy, but she loved her doll best of all. She named her Charlotte. Then they all looked at each other's mittens and tried on their own, and Peter bit a large piece out of his stick of candy, but Alice and Ella and Mary and Laura licked theirs to make it last longer. "Well, well," Uncle Peter said, "isn't there even one stocking with nothing but a switch in it? My, have you all been such good children?" But they didn't believe that Santa Claus could really have given any of them nothing but a switch. That happened to some children, but it couldn't happen to them. It was so hard to be good all the time every day for a whole year. "You mustn't tease the children, Peter," Aunt Eliza said. Ma said, "Laura, aren't you going to let the other girls hold your doll?" And she meant little girls must not be so selfish. So Laura let Mary take the beautiful doll, and then Alice held her a minute, and then Ella. They smoothed the pretty dress and admired the red flannel stockings and the gaiters and the curly woolen hair. But Laura was glad when at last Charlotte was safe back in her arms. Paw and Uncle Peter had each a pair of new warm mittens, knit in little squares of red and white. Ma and Aunt Eliza had made them. Aunt Eliza had brought Ma a large red apple stuck full of cloves. How good it smelled, and how it would not spoil, for so many cloves would keep it sound and sweet. Ma gave Aunt Eliza a little needle book she had made with bits of silk for covers and soft white flannel leaves into which to stick the needles. The flannel would keep the needles from rusting. They all admired Ma's beautiful bracket, and Alice and Aunt Eliza, they all admired Ma's beautiful bracket, and Aunt Eliza said that Uncle Peter had made one for her, of course, with different carving. Santa Claus had not given them anything at all. Santa Claus did not give grown people presents, but that was not because they had not been good. Pa and Ma were good. It was because they were grown up, and grown people must give each other presents. Then all the presents must be laid away for a little while. Peter went out with Pa and Uncle Peter to do the chores. Alice and Ella helped Aunt Eliza make the beds, and Laura and Mary set the table while Ma got breakfast. For breakfast there were pancakes, and Ma made a pancake man for each one of the children. Ma called each one in turn to bring her plate, and each could stand by the stove and watch, while with the spoonful of batter, Ma put on the arms and the legs and the head. It was exciting to watch her turn the whole little man over, quickly and carefully, on a hot griddle. When it was done, she put it smoking right on the plate. Peter ate the head off his man right away, but Alice and Ella and Mary and Laura ate theirs slowly in little bits, first the arms and legs and then the middle, saving the head for last. Today the weather was so cold that they could not play outdoors, but there were the new mittens to admire, the candy to lick, and they all sat on the floor together and looked at the pictures in the Bible and the pictures of all kinds of animals and birds in Pa's big green book. Laura kept Charlotte in her arms the whole time. Then there was the Christmas dinner. Alice and Ella and Peter and Mary and Laura did not say a word at the table, for they knew that children should be seen and not heard. But they did not need to ask for second helpings. Ma and Aunt Eliza kept their plates full and let them eat all the good things that they could hold. Christmas comes but once a year, said Aunt Eliza. Dinner was early because Aunt Eliza and Uncle Peter and the cousins had such a long way to go. Best the horses can do, Uncle Peter said. We'll hardly make it home before dark. Just as soon as they had eaten dinner, Uncle Peter and Pa went to put the horses to the sled, while Ma and Aunt Eliza wrapped up the cousins. They pulled heavy woolen stockings over their woolen stockings and the shoes that they were already wearing. They put on mittens and coats and warm hoods and shawls, wrapped mufflers around their necks and thick woolen veils over their faces. Ma slipped piping hot baked potatoes into their pockets to keep their fingers warm, and Aunt Eliza's flat irons were hot on the stove, ready to put at the feet of the sled. The blankets and quilts and the buffalo robes were warm too, so they all got into the big bobsled, cozy and warm, and Pa tucked the last robe well in around them. Goodbye, goodbye, they called, and off they went, the horses trotting gaily and the sleigh bells ringing. In just a little while, the merry sounds of the bells were gone, and Christmas was over. But what a happy Christmas it had been. And that's the end of that one. There's that same picture. That's an important picture. It's going to be part of the movie magic and part of the giveaway that we're going to do. And real quick, we're going to close off. Oh, and this, my Miss Beadle card is my bookmark for this storybook. Alright, finish her off real quick here. Oh, I forgot about this. I got a card. I did put it in the book. It says, what's your favorite movie and why? And I tried and I tried and I tried and I thought about a ton of different movies. I don't have one favorite movie. I probably don't even have a top 5 favorites that are tied. It's probably more like 10 or 15. I don't have a favorite. But instead, I wrote on the back of it where my answer would normally go, happy birthday, Grandma Lovey and my governor, who I believe is Mimi, right? And then last, we're reading from Many Ways to Say I Love You. It's Wisdom for Parents and Children from Mr. Rogers by Mr. Fred Rogers. Each of our life's journeys is unique. No child will take the same journey as the parent, and no parent can determine what a child's journey will be. There's mystery in raising children. As your children grow and develop their unique talents, you can't control every aspect of their lives. For example, we can offer children music lessons and do all we can to encourage them to appreciate music. But if making music isn't their way of expressing themselves, we have to trust that they'll find their own ways. And that here, that's going to do it. I don't have the thing on the wall memorized. You think I would because it's a Mr. Rogers thing, so I can't read it. I didn't bring it with me, but I'm proud of you guys for being exactly who you're supposed to be. You're the only one that gets to decide that. And our minds, just like our books, they work better when they're open. That's it. We're into the holidays. It's going to be all holiday stories. I love you guys. I'll see you next weekend.